Sure. I'll take a first stab at this one and then pass it on to Russ as we go. It's amazing. This is still a question that we hear a lot. And to start by setting a little bit of context, when we talk about SBOMs, we're referring to a list of components. So think of it like the ingredients in your food, but for software. And beyond the ingredients, we also have some metadata for those components that track the provenance of those components, such as their authors, as well as their versions. So you can think, as we dive into SBOMs, we're talking about SBOMs as a summary of the pieces of code that make up an application or the services that make up an application. And this concept has really been around for a long time. SPDX, one of the major recognized standards for SBOMs, has been around since 2011. And it shares common roots with manufacturing processes that are really trying to understand the supply chain of the software that they incorporate. Recently, we see the resurgence of this question because SBOMs are at the center of legislative compliance. And most clients, when they ask us this question, this is what they're thinking about. It's becoming a requirement, particularly with a focus on vulnerability. So, for example, the US Executive Order 14028 or the Department of Homeland Security Software Supply Chain Risk Management Act, these share a common goal of mandating the production of an SBOM in order to help IT teams report or respond to incidents, particularly around security vulnerabilities. Similarly, in the EU, that even though there are localized efforts in certain countries like Finland and Germany that require production of SBOM, the big one you hear about is the CRA, Cyber Resilience Act, addressing the issues of vulnerabilities that lack timely updates and users really needing to understand these vulnerabilities and who they can rely on for help in order to inform incident response. Beyond vulnerabilities, SBOMs are increasingly an integral part of software supply chain to enable transparency and incident response. So to wrap all that up start answering your question, Aaron, like SBOMs are relevant to anybody and anywhere where there's a software buyer vendor relationship. Russ, you work with a lot of clients on SBOM production. How have you seen this manifest in your world?
Yeah, they really are relevant anywhere there's a software vendor or buyer relationship. As you said, if you happen to be in the middle of a supply chain in that model, you might supply more than one OEM. For example, you might have one supplier with different OEM customers who have different requirements. So this has led to some pretty interesting scenarios. Some have asked to see snippets of code listed on an SBOM. One supplier we worked with had to provide SBOM in SPDX 1.0 versus 2.x versus Cyclone DX for basically the same product, which can be difficult to manage. Let's add to that the licensing declarations. So some require it on an SBOM, whereas others, it can break their machinery or their processes to have additional fields, for example, because they haven't accounted for those extra fields. We've seen some OEMs that have specified tooling types, for example, SCA versus binary scanning or package analysis, which can then add another layer of complexity depending on what tooling you may have available to you. For software that lands on an embedded device, again, it's best to be prepared in the very likely event you'll be asked to provide an SBOM. So we would advocate for a more granular SBOM in the case of embedded devices. It might be important in these cases to generate a source SBOM. That way you're prepared if you happen to be, or if you're asked to provide one. Another important consideration with embedded or IoT devices is knowing what got shipped at a granular enough level, since these devices can then be difficult to update after they're shipped. For software that might be deployed into a broader application environment, you could make an argument that a source SBOM is potentially less critical here because most application environments would be using mostly still packages and dependencies, but it's still important to declare all dependencies and components, not just the top level.
Yeah, it sounds like, and thanks for us, it sounds like those who really need SBOMs are software vendors to demonstrate transparency that they know what's in the software they're shipping. It also shows that they understand and they're willing to stand behind what they're providing as a supplier. A software consumer who might use the information in an SBOM in order to inform incident response, as well as potential vulnerability remediation efforts. Anybody that's playing in a regulated industry or a regulated geography to where the production and supplying an SBOM is now a requirement to doing business. So it sounds like anybody who needs a better understanding of their software supply chain should be thinking about producing or requiring an SBOM as part of their software shipping or purchasing.
Your trusted partner in open source management.